We do have a quorum. I think we'll have some other members join us in a little while. We've got these meetings stacked kind of back to back. Everybody's running around like chickens with their head cut off. But let's take a moment and so we're getting the folders passed out. Kylan had to work the meeting immediately prior to this, so it's Mike, would you approach, please? Would you approach? All right, a good longtime friend of mine, Mike Iverson, is here with us today. He's got an interest in one of the bills, but he's currently president of the Independent Insurance Agents of Georgia Association, of which I've been a longtime member, 27 years, I think. And so I've asked, it's a little out of our custom, but I've asked Mike if he would open us up with a word of prayer.
Lord, we just thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for the servants of the people, those who dedicate their time to really look out for the state and trying to figure out difficult issues and come to conclusions on those. We ask for wisdom. We ask for temperance. We ask for everybody who's here to be blessed. We ask for all those people out there to be blessed. We know there's lots of people in need, Lord. We ask that you guide them, keep them, and put them in your grace. And thank you again, Lord, for these servants. In your name we pray. God's people said,
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Okay, we're going to jump right in. We have we're going to do Senate Bill 76. Senator Merritt, and we've already had a hearing on this bill, so we're not going to take any public testimony. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll let the senator explain it to us again, and then we'll see what the will of the committee is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all again for, I'm glad we brought this piece of legislation to vote, but basically it is to cap insulin costs for state health benefit plans. So we would cap that insulin cost at $35. I think our current is $50. And again, it's good for our employees. It's good. We're trying to save lives here and make sure that we're extending more insulin options to all of our workers in the state. So I think Senator Kirkpatrick had a question about, on the last time, being specific about the types of insulin. So we did give you that information on the types, and that should be in your packets as well. And Senator Harbin, I think you had a question about if we could do 30 instead of 90 instead of, that is the will of the committee. If you would like to add an amendment to do that, I don't see an issue. But other than that, if there's no other questions, I ask for your favorable consideration. I think this is a great bill. It won't cost the state much. You're fine.
If you would do this, oh, Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did not pray. I have to ask the senator, did she pray for her bill?
I
as
did
the
pray
others-
for my
Okay,
bill.
good, okay. I just want to
Well-
make sure we have people praying here. If I could ask this of you, I like the bill from that standpoint. We don't have really a financial note on what the cost would be to go from 30 to 90 days. If we could get that, and then would you be open to, maybe an amendment on the floor to go to 90? I just think that's wise as far as buying something when you can get that and do it one time rather than 3 times. There's got to be some type of cost savings there, I would think.
Okay, you want a cost analysis if we do 30 or do 90 versus 30 and how much it would cost the state, if I'm hearing correctly?
Would like to do that if we could, and then
Okay.
we can address that on the floor if we need to.
That's fair.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
If I
Appreciate
could add to that, I guess, sort of our thinking is the proposal is $35 copay for a 30-day supply. Maybe talk to DCH and see what a reasonable copay would be for a 90-day supply.
Okay.
It might need to be 50 for 90 days.
Okay, we can have.
I mean, I don't know, just,
I'll,
I don't really want to amend it on the fly here without more information.
Department of Health has already answered. He says 100 and, I'm sorry, 105 for 90.
I'm sorry. Brandy Sullivan.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I will.
Come to the,
I'll let Brandy go. I didn't know she was actually
Hello, I'm
speaking.
Brandy Sullivan, Director of Government Relations for the Department of Community Health. The fiscal note that was that accompanies this bill contemplated a $105 copay for a 90-day supply. So 3 times 35. Yeah, most of the drugs. Yeah, yes, sir. Most of the insulins that we cover are well below that cap already.
Well, I'm sorry, reducing the amount of insulin. I used to get X amount of boxes. Now all of a sudden they're gone now, so I got to run to the drugstore with it.
I'll be more than happy to follow up with you on that.
Sarah, could you draft us a quick amendment to change line
29, I think.
29 and then maybe 37? $47. All right, looks like maybe line 5, 29, 37, 47. And you speak to it, but I mean, I think.
As we were dealing with this, I mean, we're talking about postage savings, et cetera, if this is mailed through the mail. So it's really a savings overall, just from a processing standpoint. Even though the copay might increase, it's just, you only have to do it every 3 months. And I've got to believe there's an additional cost savings in doing that as well, even though we may not have that here, but it couldn't do anything but save us money rather than being more costly from that standpoint. Would I be correct in making that
Right,
assumption?
and if you want us to kind of rerun the analysis with a different copay set at a 90-day supply, we could do that. But I just wanted to kind of clarify that the analysis that was done was based on that $105 for 90 days.
Okay. What we may want to do with the chairman's approval is if you could get that for us, and then if we needed to make a change, that could be made on the floor or somewhere else.
Sure, I'll be happy
Okay.
to share that with everybody on the committee.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Senator Lucas.
You recognize for a motion?
All right, so we've got a motion.
Second.
We have a second. And any,
That we pass,
Seven six.
Senate Bill 76 as amended. That we pass Senate Bill 76 as amended.
So you like the 90-day, you want that added to it?
That was the amendment that Senator Merritt agreed to, so I don't think we have any more discussion. DCH has come in and
Well,
they know what the figures are, 'cause
we're waiting on the amendment, Senator. And I think we want, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we want 30-day or.
90 days is better. I'm telling you.
Yeah, 90 days, I believe, would save us the maximum amount of money that we're talking about.
Well, and we ran it with both,
Okay.
like that you could do with the cap, no more than $35 for a 30-day supply, and no more than $105 for a 90-day supply.
Okay.
So,
Can we do an or?
So are we good with that?
The 90 days is better,
I know 90 is
but
better.
I'm getting 39, yeah.
Absolutely.
No more than $35 for a 30-day supply, and no more than $105 for a 90-day supply. Yes.
They gonna pick the, DCH gonna pick the 90.
There's no difference, except there is a savings.
Well,
that
and the
would be
convenience of
recognized.
getting 90 days
for
at a
the,
time.
as you said, the shipping.
Shipping and everything else, so you're gonna at least save on shipping if nothing else.
Are you okay with that, Senator Merritt?
okay with
All right,
Okay.
stand by. Let me see what else we got. We can maybe. All right, we're going to circle back to this, Senator Merritt.
Okay, you can keep reading on that.
Thank you. When we get the amendment, we're going to circle back. All right, I'm getting off my script a little bit, but Chairman Robertson, is your bill pretty straightforward and quick?
Yes, sir. It's the same bill we passed through this committee last session. Mr. Chairman.
Would you mind to go ahead and present that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senate Bill 158, I guess you're Mike 1.
Yes, sir. It's SB 158 LC 520196. It's the fortified bill. It's the same one that we passed through here last year. Currently, the state of Georgia recognizes the minimum building standards of the International Building Code and the International Residential Code. And what Fortified does is it allow insurance companies to give discounts on individuals that go above and beyond those codes. The primary purpose of this is to lower insurance costs by reducing damage caused on property during the types of incidents that we know happen here in the state of Georgia. Tornadoes and bad weather and other things that come from our friends down in Florida and off the coast. Fortified standards in construction tend to use larger, more sturdier construction materials to include stones, bricks, concrete, and other things to make homes safer and more sustainable during critical situations. And what this bill does is it allows the individuals who decide to build at this advanced standard to be able to get a discount from their insurance carriers.
All right, any questions for the author? Just to be clear, this is a shall, so the insurance company shall provide a rate for fortified buildings.
Right, and the insurance companies determine what that discounted rate is. It's not made by the state or anybody else.
All right, what's the will of the committee on Senate Bill 158 LC 520196? Got a motion to pass, Senator Lucas, seconded by Senator Harbison. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right, it passed unanimously. I don't think Senator Kenny was quite here yet, so we won't ask him to vote on this. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 yes. All right, thank you. Okay. All right, you got it? All right, we're going to go back to Senator Merritt's insulin bill, Senate Bill 76.
You mean to write it later?
Mm-mm. Okay. All right, I'm going to read the amendment, proposed amendment, proposed by Senator Harbin. So if you look at LC 520205 that's in your folder, look at line 5 with me. We're going to just eliminate, strike, where it's after medication, to an amount not to exceed $35 per 30-day supply. Going to strike that language there. Then on line 29, it's going to say covered insulin medications to an amount not to exceed $35 per 30-day supply or $105 per 90-day supply. So we're inserting after supply or 105 per 90-day supply. And then on line 37, we're going to insert after the number, after $35 per 90-day supply, comma, $105, comma. And then on line 47, we're going to insert after 30-day, we're going to insert or 90-day. Everybody clear on that? All right, so we had a motion to make that amendment by Senator Harbin. Do I have a second? All right, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so now we have a motion from Senator Lucas to pass LC, the committee sub for LC 520205 as amended. It's not a committee sub, but pass this bill as amended. By substitute. Second by Senator Harbison. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. All right, passed unanimously. Good luck in roll, Senator Merritt. All right, next, Senator Dolezal has a Senate Bill 186, Georgia Landowners Protection Act. Floor is yours, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing this bill today. We're working from LC 442196. I am joined here with Nicole Leet, who has much more legal experience and a higher IQ than myself, and so she's going to speak to some of the finer points of this bill. But I think it's important to start with the why, and I think probably the thing that most illustrates the why is zooming out a little bit and recognizing that when magazines say things like Georgia is the worst judicial hellhole in the country, what does that mean? And we like to talk about being the best state to do business, but I would ask the question of how long can the best state to do business coexist with the worst judicial hellhole, and that's obviously something we don't want to test. So it's, I think, incumbent upon us as legislators to find the balance between the two competing sides in issues like this. We had a case that was described as a nuclear case due to the size of the damage, the $43 million judgment against CVS in a case where a victim was shot on a CVS property in a Facebook marketplace transaction gone wrong. And in that case, the victim was found to have been 5% at fault for choosing a place in essentially a crime-ridden area to conduct a transaction. CVS was found to be 95% at fault, and there was damages awarded like I said, of $43 million. So this bill essentially is addressing the question of when is a landowner liable, and to what guardrails and rules do we put around the liability of landowners in cases where things happen on their property that they have not sanctioned, that they have not allowed, that they may not even be aware of, and what is reasonable in that case. And so with that, I'll let Nicole speak to some of the finer legalese of what we're trying to do here, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, essentially what is happening is businesses are being held financially liable for the actions of criminals that come on their property that oftentimes they do not even know are there or have any opportunity to prevent. The issue is people coming onto the property. Businesses are businesses. You can't stop people from coming onto the property. However, we have a wide breadth of cases that show even when you tell people not to come on your property, you can be held liable, like CSX was for $11 million after they told a production company, you can't come on our tracks and shoot here, and they did it anyway. The CVS case is another example. It also highlights the problem of, as you heard those apportionment verdicts, nothing was appointed to the shooter, the one who actually shot and injured the victim. No apportionment, zero. There's also the Kroger verdict that you might have heard of that was $70 million plus. Now, you might be asking, okay, well, why aren't these businesses taking actions? The answer is they are. Kroger had a security guard there, $70 million verdict. The issue has become is there's no standard. For instance, Florida has standards for convenience stores. You have to do A, B, C, and D, and then once you post this sign and have this, you are not held responsible for criminal actions. Nowhere else are we holding people or businesses responsible for the actions of another, but that is what has evolved essentially in Georgia. Companies are leaving because of this, because the standard that has evolved is it's never enough. You could have done more. The standard is now, well, you should have known this was going to happen. Even if you didn't know the victim was on your property, you didn't know the criminal was going to come on your property, let alone that he was going to commit a crime, you should have known, and you should have taken more steps. Oh, you had cameras, you should have had security. Oh, you had a security guard, well, you should have had more. So this bill does address those issues and breaks it out as we already see in our statute according to the duties owed towards either an invitee, a licensee, or a trespasser. Those duties essentially are not changed except to clarify with the invitee to essentially correct the erosion of the law. What used to be an exception, that normally you're not an insurer of the premises, you're not liable for everything that happens to a person on your property, and most importantly, you're not responsible for the actions of a third-party criminal who decides to commit a crime. That's evolved to, well, you should have known he was going to do that. This bill fixes that.
I have a question. Senator Lucas?
Yes. First of all, CVS, Kroger, all of them are open to the public. Vagrants come on properties. I've seen managers go get the sworn police to have them removed. I have a problem with this, but if you talk about making them put signs, all those things up, then I think I probably can support it. But right now, they're open to the general public, 24/7, CVS 24/7. And people in those areas, they're in neighborhoods. And Kroger is in a neighborhood. And so people are people, and those of us who look at it, we have a lot of folks who have mental problems that are walking the streets. And therefore, I think that if you're gonna try to pass something like this, then all those standards should be met, that there shall be signs, because they can't evict you from the property by calling the police as a vagrant. All those things should be required for them to do in order to try to keep them from being negligent of something that they're open 24/7 to the public to.
Sir, if I may, I think I can answer your questions and comments in a couple parts. First, what I mentioned as far as the signs and requirements is actually an example from Florida. That's what they require for convenience stores specifically. This proposed bill doesn't have any sort of requirements in that way. But to address what I think the core concern you were expressing is this bill does allow, as our law does have, it doesn't allow businesses to just ignore problems and not take any steps towards security. Unfortunately, these big names that have had these verdicts recently are big names, CVS, Kroger, and it doesn't take into account that this same thing is happening to the small and local businesses in the community as well. And the effect of these $30 million demands that are now coming based on these excessive verdicts is putting them out of business. They're leaving based on the fact that the argument is, well, you're in a high crime community, you should know about the crime. Businesses don't want their customers to be shot or hurt on their property. That's bad business. So I don't think there's a good argument that businesses are just gonna throw up their hands and be like, we're in a bad area, we're gonna stay here and not do anything at all. But this bill addresses that, because if they did throw up their hands and say, we're not gonna do anything at all, and there was rampant people laying down in front of their doors or whatever, very enterprising attorneys would make a very good argument that that's willful and wanton conduct. It's not just negligence.
I disagree with you. I've seen a liquor store who had a problem with someone that came on and stabbed one of their employees. They took a warrant out on it that he couldn't come on the premises anymore. He tried to go back on the premises, the police were called, and he was removed. I don't think that you can take this without those proper guards. They are open 24/7. They business. It's about money. And I understand that we have unscrupulous characters that come around, but they're open 24/7. They are open. Their doors are open to the general public. Even though it might be a private store, it's open to the general public. So when the public comes in, they might not know this guy is a criminal. They might not know that this guy has a mental problem. But the action takes place on their property. So I'm saying that if they do those things, the proper signage and those kind of things, then I can basically see myself kind of supporting it. I understand what you're getting to. You get to it's the big pocket theory. That's all it is. I mean, who got the most money and who you go after?
Well, unfortunately, they're going after businesses that aren't open 24/7 and businesses that don't even know the criminals on their property.
Oh, they listen. If they open, they know. You see them coming across the property. You know up front who they are.
I wish it would be that easy.
Well,
Unfortunately,
it
many
is
of my
that
clients
easy.
can't identify criminals.
Thank you, Senator Lucas. Tell us your name again. I'm sorry, we didn't catch that.
Nicole Leet,
With,
Gray, Russ, St. Almond, Moffett, and Brisky. It's a mouthful.
maybe you can leave us your card. Or and would you pull the mic closer to you, please? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Who is this? Your number 8. So, Vice Chairman.
Okay. Thank you so much, Senator Joseph, for bringing this legislation, and thank you for your input. I think this is that we've got to realize this is that businesses will move if they cannot be successful where they are. It causes a hardship upon areas that are open 24/7, which serve people who are working 24/7. And I think that if we do not do something to stop this type of thing, businesses will continue to leave the state of Georgia or leave areas and really leave our citizens without services they should have simply because of a liability issue that is unreasonable in that respect. And so I thank you for bringing this, but I think something needs to be done, because the other part is this: the insurance industry will quit insuring the businesses as well. That's another how do I say, unforeseen consequence that happens here. And that's already some of the things we're seeing, as Senator Dolezal talked about, the judicial hellhole report, which is very eye-opening when you see what's happening. So I thank you for bringing that and for helping us.
Okay, we do have some people signed up to testify, but I have a few more people with questions. I hope we can just have questions here. And not so much statements. So, Senator Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a statement. Senator Dolezal, I thought I heard you say something in your introduction about the CVS incident, or one of the incidents. It was an internet or a sale gone wrong in the parking lot. Was this at the CVS? Is that the case you're talking about with the large award? Did the CVS advertise that their parking lot was open for people to come and do retail sales in the parking lot, or did they encourage people to come in and sell products via the internet and make the exchanges in their parking lots?
I'm gonna let Nicole answer that for you. She's more
Yeah.
familiar with the case.
No, they did not.
Okay, so they weren't advertising, inviting anybody in there to do any side businesses, side hustles out in their parking lot, which led to this crime, right?
Correct.
And in most of these cases, a lot of these businesses have signs out there that say no loitering, or many that I don't frequently go to, but that have signs on the door saying no firearms or weapons inside the businesses, correct? And most of the time, these are encouraged by the insurance companies and others that do provide coverage for these individuals, right?
Yes.
And these individuals in no way discriminate against anybody that comes in there, because I know, and correct me, there's times when I go into the local drugstore and I'm dressed like I am now, and there's other times that I go in dressed in a way that I probably couldn't get through airport security because I just don't look like I should be there. But they allow me to come and go at will. And there is nothing, I'm not violating any laws or anything by going into those stores and doing my business. But the situation you brought out, apparently the individual went into the store after some deal in the parking lot went south and shot the individual he was doing work with?
Not even. The person was in the CVS parking lot, invited someone to meet him in the CVS parking lot, and during the course of that sale that was to take place in his vehicle in the CVS parking lot, a shooter came up, the door was open to the car, an altercation ensued, and the person was shot.
Okay.
They never went inside the CVS.
And CVS itself was held liable?
85%.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Harbison, you have a,
The questions I wanted to ask were answered by the senator from Trinidad. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we do have some folks signed up to speak on this, so we'll call up Laurel Hart with Columbia Residential. Welcome, Ms. Hart.
Thank you. My name is Laurel Hart. I'm the Vice President of Asset Management for an affordable housing developer by the name of Columbia Residential. Some of you may have known our founder, Noel Khalil, who believes strongly in providing homeless housing for some of those most in need in Georgia. I'm here today to support this particular bill and to talk a little bit about what the current state of laws in Georgia have done to a mission-oriented for-profit developer who goes into some of the worst areas of Georgia to try to revitalize those areas and make those areas better for the people that live there. I don't think there's anything about this bill that prevents us, Columbia Residential, from acting reasonably to prevent crimes on our properties. I'm going to give you an example of one of our properties, which is what the insurance companies call located in a high crime area, which includes areas such as Summerdale over by Turner Field, a rapidly gentrifying area. We spend more than $1 million a year on security for one property. We have state-of-the-art cameras, 156 cameras that are hooked into the police department. We have license plate readers. We have armed security guards that patrol the property. We have 4 to 5 Atlanta police officers that live in the property without being charged rent to help with safety in the neighborhood. Those are things we think we needed to do to come into a high crime area and make it better. We are held strictly liable for crimes that not only happen on our property under the current state of the law, but also for crimes that happen in adjacent properties. We can no longer get firearm coverage for the majority of our properties because the insurance companies have deemed Georgia to be too much of a risk to provide insurance for much needed affordable housing. I think sometimes that we're kind of caught in the middle of what I would call well-intentioned policies. We too care about the people that live in our properties. We feel strongly that our mission is to provide safe, decent, affordable housing, but we cannot prevent every criminal that is located in a 5-mile area of our property. There's no way that we can provide security to prevent things from happening if we're going to go into those areas. And that's kind of the situation that we unfortunately are in right now because of what is happening in Georgia. You're seeing an exit not only of businesses such as affordable housing developers who are selling their properties and leaving Georgia, but you're also seeing some property owners that believe they could be put out of business by what is happening. All of these properties, whether you're a commercial business owner, a lot of them have investors, they have lenders. We all have to be insured for the loans that we take out to build these properties by Fannie and Freddie. They require significant amounts of insurance to protect their investment and to protect us. I want to tell you just a little bit about what has happened with our insurance rates because we do build in areas with high crime statistics. In 2019, when I started at Columbia, we had 25 million of umbrella coverage for our portfolio of approximately 6,500 units. The cost for that was $244,000. 1 year later, as we went into the pandemic, we could no longer afford 25 million of coverage because the cost for 7 million of coverage was $1.8 million in 1 year. That is what happened to our insurance rates. Today, we have 2 million of coverage, not because we don't want to be covered in the event there's some catastrophic event at our properties, but because the cost of 2 million of coverage is 1.3 million, and they will not insure us for crime as a result of the fact that we build in areas that have seen crime before. Not necessarily at our property, but near our property or in the general area. So what we have seen is the loss of insurance, the inability to get coverage. We're in technical default under our loan documents because we can no longer maintain the type of insurance that is required by the commercial lenders. And this is happening across the apartment industry as crime has gone up in Atlanta in general. In 2021,
we're going to have to move on. Are you almost done?
Yes,
I'm
I am.
sorry, I apologize.
It's no problem. I just want to say in closing that the majority of shootings that we see do not involve our tenants. but happen at or near our property during the commission of a crime. This means under current liability standards, we have often found ourselves paying settlement dollars to the perpetrators of crimes that are impacting our properties and endangering our resident. And again, I just talked to an affordable housing developer just this last week who was selling his properties. He said he paid $3 million for a shooting that occurred at the Wendy's next to his property through his insurance. And he said, that's it, we've had enough. So again, I am a huge proponent of making sure that our tenants are safe. And I don't think anybody is asking that the standard that we do that reasonably be modified. But I do think that the standard of strict liability, not only for crime on our properties, but crime in the insurance-drawn area surrounding our property, is going to force not only affordable housing, but Kroger, CVS, and other businesses that are needed by our residents to exit these areas, and that's what we're seeing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. All right, next, Mike Moran with GTLA.
Thank you, Senator. As you indicated, my name is Mike Moran. I'm a lawyer here in Atlanta. I was born and raised in Jessup, Georgia, lifelong Georgian. It's down in Wayne County. I've been in Atlanta for a little over 25 years, been practicing law here for 25 years. My firm is not too far from here. It's Law in Moran. We're just a block from the Varsity. Senator Cowart, I know Senator Cowart from my practice. But if any of you frequent the Varsity, we're a block from there. It's a brick building with the Atlas statue out front. So we're a small plaintiff's personal injury firm. I would like to start by responding to some of the testimony that I heard sitting here and correct a few misstatements that were made. First of all, there was a comment that in Georgia, property owners are strictly liable for crime that occurs within a 5-mile area around their property. That is just not the state of law in Georgia. That's just not the way that it works. I've been doing this for 25 years. Senator Cowart, I think Calcert knows as well. That's just not the law here. You're responsible for what happens on your property, not what happens 5 miles away. And there's also no strict liability for it. There's a very high burden that we have to prove in these cases in order to show that the property owner was negligent in these types of cases. The Kroger case that was mentioned, I'd like to give you all some of the facts of the Kroger case. We happened to handle that case, and our client was a 27-year-old Navy veteran who was on his way to see his daughter in a play at church. And he happened to pass by that Kroger. He didn't know that area, and wanted to go in and pay his car note through Western Union and buy a DiGiorno's pizza. I remember him saying that because frozen pizza is so good. But he was going to buy a DiGiorno's pizza. So he pulled in, parked, was getting out of his car, and was carjacked and shot 11 times. He spent a month in Grady in the ICU, 2 months at Shepherd, a year in the VA. He's paralyzed, has millions of dollars in medical bills. When we did a little investigation into the case, what we found out was that Kroger, a few months before that, the manager of the Kroger had asked corporate Kroger to provide a security guard in the parking lot because she said the parking lot had become dangerous. Someone mentioned that there was a security guard at the property. There was no security guard in that parking lot. There was unarmed security inside the store that just watched for shoplifting, but never left the store to provide security in the parking lot. The manager specifically asked for security in the parking lot and was not provided it. We also learned that the district manager for Kroger, they do these internal rankings across the country of what is the likelihood for crime at a particular store. They ranked this store a 10 out of 10. So the very highest ranking for the most likely place where you could be the victim of a crime, they had internally ranked this store. just 2 weeks, and despite that, they still didn't provide any security in the parking lot, even though the manager requested it. 2 weeks before Mr. Taylor was shot, a store employee reported to the manager that he witnessed someone pull a gun on someone in the parking lot. Reported it to the manager. He said it was someone he'd seen in the parking lot before. Still nothing happened, no parking lot security. And then our client, Laquan Taylor, came up and got shot. He was shot by the same person who the store clerk had reported was in the parking lot pointing a gun at somebody 2 weeks before. Under Georgia law, that met the standard. We had shown that they were on notice, they had actual knowledge of a hazardous condition on the property, that there was crime in the parking lot, that they knew the area was dangerous. They had taken no steps to deter crime in the parking lot. They hadn't done anything. Had they taken reasonable steps, and if there was a security guard in the parking lot and it happened despite that, that'd be a pretty darn good argument that they had taken reasonable steps to try to deter crime, but they hadn't done anything. This current bill, and I'll address that, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, Senator Walker, I know you're trying to move things along. The CVS case. CVS admitted, we handled that case too, coincidentally. CVS admitted in court that our client, James Carmichael, was their customer, and that they admitted that in court. It was called a stipulation. They stipulated that he was their customer. He was there to buy some eye drops. There was a mention of this was a Facebook Marketplace transaction. There was no Facebook Marketplace transaction. This transaction that never happened was between a gentleman that Mr. Carmichael had met previously at a gas station chit-chatting. And Mr. Carmichael sold like refurbished iPads and iPhones, and there's a whole market for that, it turns out, where you can sell it. And they're not stolen, because if they're stolen, somehow they get wiped out or you can't use them. So these were legitimately just resale items. And so the gentleman told him that he might want to buy something at some later time. And weeks later, Mr. Carmichael got a call from him, and he said, "I'd like to look at an iPad for my daughter for Christmas." Mr. Carmichael said, "Well, I happen to be in Atlanta, and I'm going to be in the Moreland Avenue area. I'm going to stop at the CVS. I've got to get some eye medication, some eye drops. If you want to meet me there, I'll talk to you." And so that's what he was doing there. He was going to CVS as a customer. He was also going to talk to this guy while he was there. But let me talk about a little bit of what CVS's knowledge about what had been going on at this property. Just a few months before, or less than a year before Mr. Carmichael was shot, a cashier testified that someone threatened to kill her unless she gave him the money. Afterwards, she requested security from CVS. They said no. A few months before that, a CVS customer was beaten in the parking lot and robbed in the parking lot. She reported that to CVS. Still no addition of security. A CVS manager, a year before Mr. Carmichael was shot, had a gun held to her head in the store and told to clean out the cash register or he was going to shoot her. CVS obviously knew about that. She asked for security. Nothing. Now, CVS had previously had security, but they had discontinued it a couple of years before. When they had security, they were not having any of these problems whatsoever. There was testimony from CVS employees that they brought guns to work. They were so afraid. This one gentleman said he brought a gun to work to protect himself. There was testimony from several employees that they would walk female employees to their vehicles because the parking lot was so dangerous and the parking lot was so dark that they felt threatened. One lady whose husband was a former police officer would get him to come to pick her up from work. So this was a property where the owners knew, they had actual long-standing knowledge that this place was dangerous, that their customers were being, and their employees for that matter, were being victimized by violent criminals, and they didn't do anything. The current bill, as written, in both of those cases, that conduct of CVS and Kroger would have been basically given a rubber stamp approval, so to speak. Those cases would have never, those plaintiffs could have never prevailed in those cases under the bill as currently being considered by this committee. That, I believe, is from someone who's been doing these cases for a long time, and I have to add, as a lifelong conservative Republican, it's been eye-opening for me to see some of these apartment complexes in this state, in this city, and within a crow's flight from this building. The conditions that kids have to live in with just drug deals going on, people walking around with guns, shootings weekly. And tort law was created to help regulate conduct. And it takes 12 people on a jury for any of these verdicts. There are 12 ordinary citizens that looked at the law and the facts and said this kind of conduct is not acceptable in Georgia. This isn't just lawyers. I think it's important to remember these are 12 people on a jury that are making these verdicts. But if you remove this ability for citizens and juries, and there are judges that review all of this, to regulate conduct and the conduct of these landowners, they won't do anything. And it would be bad public policy to change the law. And I do want to mention briefly what the standard is currently. It's a very high standard that you have to show in these cases. Most of these cases are proven by showing that the property had a history of prior violent crime or prior crime that could easily lead to violence, and you have to show actual knowledge of it. You have to show the property owner actually knew of the crime, that there has to be prior substantially similar crime. And the trial judge makes that determination whether you've even presented enough evidence to get past a motion to dismiss, or what they call a motion for summary judgment stage, before you can even take it to the jury. Then the law says if there is prior crime or prior substantially similar crime, the question is whether the property owner acted reasonable to try to deter the crime. There's no requirement that the property owner has to prevent all crime. The law just says take reasonable steps. That's all the property owner has to do. In these cases where these huge verdicts happen, usually the property owners are taking no steps. So I would ask that this committee not pass Senate Bill 186. The law as currently stands is good law. This would be bad public policy, and as oftentimes happens, the people who are most vulnerable are the ones who would be most affected by this. People in communities that are more at risk, the children that are living in these apartment complexes that barely have a shot in life and are having to live in these conditions. Those are the people that are going to suffer the consequences. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your testimony. Thank you, Mike. Next, we have another Mike, Mike Iverson. And I introduced him earlier, but he's the current president of the Independent Insurance Agents of Georgia.
Thank you for having me here. The independent insurance agents, we basically place about 85% of the insurance for commercial insurance and apartment complexes, et cetera. And so the law that we're talking about and in support of, I'd like to just talk about a few things that impact there and for your consideration. Why am I here? I mean, I'll say this, that rising premiums selfishly are good for me. I get paid more with rising premiums. However, I also realize that the most important thing is that we have healthy communities. And what is a healthy community? It's a mixture of people who can affordably live there, along with businesses that can also be healthy and operate there. And so the thing that I put out here today to you, I think I was very interested. Trial attorneys, I have so much respect because I'm in sales, right? So they say you got to have sizzle with some steak. So I'm going to give you guys some steak, but man, they're great at sizzle, right? So apologize for not having as much sizzle, but I would welcome questions on some of these things. Before, what wasn't addressed is why didn't CVS provide security? I think Columbia Properties gave you that answer on why they no longer have armed security. Because you have to weigh what could go wrong. And then the giant lawsuit for what went wrong when you did your best for where you operate. I have great respect for Columbia and the things that they do inside of communities, but I also understand their plight. So one of the areas that I wanted to drill on was, oddly enough, apartments. Some of our members, I polled 75,000 units in Georgia, which is a pretty credible number. I would hope you guys would all agree. And I also looked at insurance companies who were in this market space. And by the way, the trial attorneys should be, if we really care about our communities, they should be hopeful that we keep a marketplace that allows for appropriate coverage limits for a property like Columbia to carry big liability limits and maintain those limits for claimants. We should be concerned about that because attorneys right now would tell the apartment complex community that you need to move your domicile. You shouldn't be in Georgia. You got a better shot at getting to federal court if you're domiciled somewhere else. So first thing, leave. Second, raid your asset. I realize this isn't Larry's asset, but if it was Larry who decided to invest in an apartment complex, you may have chose to invest in it, but you know what? You should debt leverage that thing to the hilt. Because coverage is no longer findable on the basis that it was 5 years ago. And what do I mean when I say that? The majority of these units are through what's called surplus lines insurance companies. And what does that mean for this group? I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. There's admitted carriers who are under the guise of the insurance commissioner's office and who looks at rate, the policy coverage, et cetera. And then you have non-admitted carriers, which they can kind of do what they want. So the majority of apartment complexes now, majority, when I say majority, I'm saying my members say between 75 and 80% of the marketplace either has a sublimit or an exclusion for assault and battery. Either has a sublimit or exclusion for abuse and molestation. What does that mean? That means there's no coverage there underneath liability anymore? Or if they do, they have a maximum of 100,000. Some get as much as 250 or even 500,000, and that's the limits. So a company like Columbia went from $25 million limits with no exclusions for these things to exclusions for firearms and other things. It's not a healthy marketplace. I have a list of insurance companies. You'll know almost every national carrier used to write apartments. They no longer do in Georgia. I'd be glad to share the list with the committee. I'll send it on to you rather than waste your time. And I would also echo what Columbia says. If we care about our communities, we have to have affordable places to live. And anybody who's in the apartment complex, they really look at it on a per unit basis. And when the exposures drive up because they're taking on liability, and by the way, that whole reasonable standard, a reasonable standard. I don't know about everybody on this, but if I go home and my wife considers the house cleaned by me at a reasonable standard, I always fall short. She'd be a fantastic trial attorney. She will tear me up and she will gladly point out everything that I missed. And it's never enough. There has to be some sort of guardrails on this process. Otherwise, what's going to happen is I just worked with one of my clients, a very large company, who we chose to pull out of San Francisco and Los Angeles. Why? Because it made no sense to do business there. Smart risk management. Man, I'm a great broker. We left communities. So what you guys decide, you get this very fun issue, and it's a delicate balance, but I hope that you'll take the time to understand that the community matters. And yes, there's legitimate claimants who deserve to be taken care of. But you can't say, hey, because they own the property, let's put it all on them. And I don't know how, and I just have employees, right? So I have employees, and many of you have businesses where you have employees. I am sure you're going to find an employee who will go ahead and offer that Mike Iverson should have done something at some point in time that he didn't. And I will have failed in court. That's where my wife would be great. She'd be great by the trial attorneys to be in that lawsuit against me, because she could point out all those things. I think in business you have to turn around and say, how do we really look at this person? Were they working hard to do it? And what is a reasonable standard? I think we have to underline it. I think we have to define it, and that's why we're here, for your help.
Thank you so much, Mike. All right, that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 186. We will meet Tuesday morning. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 186. We'll meet Tuesday morning at 8, and if Senator Dolezal wants that on the agenda, it'll be there. So thank you all for your patience. We've got one more issue. I don't think it's going to take very long. Senate Bill 160. Senator Steele, if you'll come forward. And I apologize for running past 3, but we did not get to start at 2. If we had started at 2, I think we'd be in pretty good shape, but yeah, we do. Go ahead, Senator Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. I'm really disappointed to see everybody leave. I thought everybody was here for our labor bill. Y'all come back. I'm here to present Senate Bill 160. This is an administrative cleanup bill for the Department of Labor. You all know our friend and colleague, Commissioner Bruce Thompson. He has inherited, unfortunately, a very difficult situation. But in the nearly 20 years that I have known him, long before he was a legislator and a member of this body, and before I was even a known factor to any of y'all, I've known this man's integrity. I've known how hardworking he is, and I know that he is doing an amazing job trying to fix a lot of the wrongs at DOL. This is one of those bills. There was a lapse in funding. This is not an expense bill. This does not do anything to the budget. This merely is an administrative cleanup that we're trying to get resolved, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Thompson to join me to walk you through the mechanics of it. Shouldn't take more than just a moment or two. Commissioner?
Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a cleanup bill. As you know, I inherited an interesting opportunity over at the Department of Labor. One of the things I inherited was this legislation sunsetted at the end of the year. It was to be reauthorized. We know this body likes sunsets, and we let it expire. What's the result of that is the rate tables. So the rate tables increase, so we're now charging a higher rate than we should. That's what this does. It goes and sets it back in statute here, where we're addressing those back down. Within that, it doesn't change the rate of what we're charging once that's set, but the fee that someone is paying, the mod rate that they're paying, it also goes back and authorizes the will of a 0.06 that was currently being charged and set aside to fund the department. That's all it does, not changing anything else other than just reauthorizing what we had before.
Any questions?
Like to be recognized for a motion.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I
It's
move
a
that
good time for that.
Senate Bill 160 do pass.
All right, I've got a second from the pro tem. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Did we have somebody signed up on this one? Sorry. Golly.
160.
So we do have somebody that wanted to speak on this, but due to the time constraints, and I've already got a motion and a second, I'm gonna, all in favor again, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you, and I apologize to Ray Calfani. I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, also, thank you for this body for what they've done in appropriations to help resolve this issue at the Department of Labor.
Thank
so
you,
much.
sir. Thanks for the work you're doing. All right.
Appreciate it, Bruce.
With that, we'll stand adjourned, but please pay attention to our next scheduled meeting. It's Tuesday, 8 a.m. Thank you.